Welcome to another episode of Service to Humanity. My name is Habiba Zoksok, your guide. The formulation and ratification of policies to guide the nation's response to humanitarian crisis as well as disaster management is one of the mandates of the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development. Along these lines, it recently reviewed the National Policy on Disaster Risk Management, a timely step especially in the face of various explosions, fire outbreaks, and other disasters reported across the country. A report of this meeting makes up a major part of our program this evening. In other reports, we shall visit Ogun State again to look at the successes of the National Homegrown School Feeding Program. All of this and more after the news highlights coming up shortly. Please stay tuned.
It's key to helping young Nigerians acquire and develop.
The federal government of Nigeria remains committed to including and protecting persons with disabilities to guarantee that no one is left behind.
I see that we are going through challenging times, and I see this woman running all about the country trying to help our people, because this lady is doing a very good job for our country.
Thank you.
Thank you for all what you have been doing for us.
The program starts with the Management Diary, where we bring you news and current happenings in the ministry and her agencies. In the news, NSIP adopts new measures to make program more effective. And federal government resumes payment of 9.24 billion naira to Kebbi residents as cash transfer. Don't go away.
Now we have taken a position to enumerate these people.
National Coordinator of the National Social Investment Program (NCIP), Engineer Umar Binder, has revealed that new measures have been introduced and taken to make the program more effective. Binder made this known while interacting with journalists at a training workshop organized for management staff of the NCIP.
A good example is the school feeding program, where we used to just get numbers to actually pay. But now we have taken a position to enumerate these people. We're taking their pictures. We're actually taking their fingerprints. We're taking their names. So we have actual database of the children that we're feeding now. So all those gaps of just paying numbers, we have overcome it. Similarly, for our monitor and evaluation, before we just used to go and see things. We are now using devices and applications to make sure that empowered teaching staff are actually met on the ground, because our GPS system through our devices are working. We are taking a number of steps, but most of it aligned to the deployment of technology to ensure that we are very, very efficient.
Binder also called on beneficiaries of the clusters of the NCIP to apply all sincerity in order for the fight against poverty to be a fruitful one.
I want to assure Nigerians that NSIP is on the ground. We want to encourage Nigerians to fear God, encourage their kith and kin to participate effectively. Let us avoid double benefiting. Let us avoid benefiting under NSIP without seriousness. If we train you and we give you starter kit, don't go and sell it. Try to actualize that trade so that you can establish your own business. If we assign you to cook and feed the children, don't undercook, don't embezzle things. That Nigerians should understand is what collectively we must do to be able to overcome the challenges of poverty in our country.
The federal government of Nigeria, through the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, says it has resumed payment of approximately 9.24 billion naira to 76,107 conditional cash transfer recipients in 6 local government areas of Kebbi states. This was revealed by Hajia Halima Shehu, the program's national coordinator, during a courtesy visit to Governor Atiku Bagudu in Birnin Kebbi. Halima Shehu apologized for the payment delay, which began in September and ended in October 2019, citing circumstances beyond her control as reasons for that. She further revealed that cash would be distributed to 76,107 beneficiaries in the 6 local government areas of Bagudu, Donko, Wasagu, Dendi, Jega, and Shenga. According to her, beneficiaries will receive 26 months of payment cycles totaling over 9.24 billion naira. The conditional cash transfer is one of the components of National Social Investment Program created in 2016. It gives beneficiaries stipends of 5,000 monthly to the poor and vulnerable households across the country.
Ṣàǹfààní gidigidi lára tèmi nílé mi àtàwọn ọmọ mi o torí ara oúnjẹ ara pákídé ẹ̀mí àṣegàrí à ń tẹ̀bà à ń ṣèbẹ̀ à ń jẹun ìjọba ṣeun lọ́wọ́ á ràn wọ́n lọ́wọ́ ètò tó dáa ni tó fáìn tó dáa ni torí ìjọ yẹn gan tí wọ́n pé owó yẹn ẹlòmíì kò sí nǹkan kan pé bóyá bákan jíjẹ tí lọ́ngbà adé báyìí wọ́n kọ́kọ́ yà ayọ̀ 2,000 wọ́n ṣèbẹ̀ àwọn ọmọ inú wọn dùn ara ráìsì àdàṣẹ́ńjì tó kù sórí ìka pákí.
You are still watching Service to Humanity. From illegal refinery explosions in the southeast, gas explosions in the northwest, or collapsed buildings in Lagos, almost every week there seems to be one disaster or the other happening across the nation. Add that to imminent flood disasters because of the rains, and you will agree with me that a proactive disaster prevention and mitigation policy is imperative. The Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, since its creation, has taken it upon itself to review the proposed policy. It held a meeting last week to review what has been done towards giving Nigerians a comprehensive plan for managing disasters. A report of that meeting is contained in our next segment of the program. Let's take details of the event in our next story. Keep watching.
The Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, in collaboration with key stakeholders, has organized a technical review of the National Disaster Risk Management Policy.
The National Disaster Risk Management Policy was...
The event, which took place on 17th May 2022 in Abuja, had in attendance Director, Disaster Risk Management, Alhaji Ali Grema, Deputy Director, Disaster Risk Management, Dr. Abubakar Suleiman, Corps Commandant, FRSC, Anthony Oko, among others. In his opening remark, Director, Disaster Risk Management, Alhaji Ali Grema, gave a brief history of the National Disaster Risk Management Policy and why it was created.
The National Disaster Risk Management Policy was developed in July 2019 by NEMA in collaboration with UNDP and other critical stakeholders. At the time, the ministry was not established. Since the establishment of the ministry, it became pertinent to the ministry to conduct a review of the existing policy to better understanding the scope of the coverage of the policy. With the new emerging issues from the field and academia, the capacity and implementations of the disaster management stakeholders make input and further operationalize the policy in relation to its program and intervention for its persons of concerns, which include the vulnerable poor, persons with special needs, victims of trafficking, internally displaced persons, refugees, elderly, unemployed, and youth.
According to Grema, the Humanitarian Ministry had conducted an internal review of the policy and examined it through a multi-sectoral lens, such as humanitarian and social development.
The review has also enabled the ministry to assess disaster risk reduction based on the experiences and lessons it has learned since it was created. The first in-house review, in line with the launch of the ministry's strategic roadmap and federal government's national development plans, focused on the ministry's mandate within the policy context, identifying gaps in the policy and offering recommendations. Meanwhile, the second review, which has just been conducted by Jahab Limited, focused on building upon those findings that led to the development of the new coordination structure, as well as monitoring and evaluation framework that will be presented and discussed today.
Grema reiterated that the expected outcome of the technical review of the National Disaster Risk Management Policy is to ensure stakeholders are aware of the ministry's roles and inputs into the policy, and that participants review and validate those inputs.
NEMA has developed several plans and policies.
Fatima Jafaru, a consultant from El Jahab Mubarak, said the strategy will address new and developing concerns in disaster management, as well as actively respond to recurring disasters such as flooding, fire outbreaks, industrial and fuel explosions, diseases, violence and communal disputes across Nigeria.
NEMA has developed several plans and policies to operationalize its mandate addressing new and emerging issues in disaster management field and actively respond to epidemics, violence, communal conflicts across Nigeria. A list of these plans, frameworks and policies can be found at the back of the National Disaster Risk Management Policy, Annex 1, page 45.
According to Jafaru, the current version of the policy sets out 4 priority areas. First, the need to raise awareness of disaster risk reduction by risk assessment, communication, early warning, and communicating the risk to the public. Second, it calls for the establishment of a multi-stakeholder governance structure that is supported by a legal framework, coordination structure, capacity building, financing model, and participation of locals in planning and response. Third, it prioritizes disaster preparedness by calling for the development of a preparedness framework which can transition activities into response, recovery, and reconstruction phases. Finally, it calls for investment in social, economic, and environmental measures to strengthen resilience. It proposes that this is achieved through addressing cross-cutting issues with disaster risk management measures in the context of urban development, humanitarianism, climate change, and conflict.
Structural measures use technological solutions like using...
There were presentations by various stakeholders on the mandate and role of the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, disaster management and social development in disaster risk reduction, inputs into the policy and coordination structure, new and emerging issues in the disaster risk reduction and management, presentation of the draft monitoring and evaluation framework of the 2019 National Disaster Risk Management Policy. A breakout session saw participants broken into 4 groups where they were tasked with reviewing priority areas and monitoring and evaluating framework, feedbacks, and inputs. Leaders of the 4 groups made presentations on what each group came up with.
Whenever we're dealing with disaster, to have a better understanding of what we're dealing with, we normally ask the following question: what, when, and where? What is the disaster in question? Where is the disaster? And when is the disaster is likely to occur? And who is going to be responsible for the disaster containment and response?
Ensure data collated are disaggregated into sex, age, and economic and social status.
Humanitarian workers should abide by core humanitarian principles. So this is actually, we're going to measure this by number of feedback from the beneficiaries, especially from the field.
Establishment of National Forestry Commission responsible for implementing forestry sector policy. I believe we might have that under Ministry of Environment, but I'm not sure.
At the end of the day, all inputs from participants were collated to be submitted to the Humanitarian Minister for consideration and further action by the Federal Executive Council. While interacting with some of the stakeholders at the event, they had these to say.
Most cases, some people, if you don't understand how to look around to identify these risks, there is no way you'll be able to combat it. But with the new development now, the policy is going to be robust in a way that people will be able to understand what risk is all about and how they reduce it. Then at the same time, because when you do the disaster risk reduction, then that is, in most cases, is before. Those are the things that you do before disaster strikes. So if you know what to do, is to enable you reduce the negative impact of disaster on the affected people.
The event is just about making sure that the policy that we have is updated to address new issues that came up after the development of the policy, particularly the policy of the National Disaster Risk Management Policy was developed before the creation of the ministry. Definitely with the creation of the ministry, the dynamics will change, and that is major reason. Then the new issues that had come up since after the development of the policy, like the COVID-19 response, a lot of other issues on disaster risk, so all of it culminated into a need to review the document, and that's why we're reviewing the document.
Disasters occur in the locals, and therefore the management of disasters should start from the local before it is escalated to the state and even to the federal. So that because sometimes any disaster that happens, we look at the NEMA or Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. Meanwhile, at the local where it is happening, they may not have done necessary things to start before it becomes overwhelming to them. So we need to use this policy to strengthen the mechanism of management of disaster risk reduction.
Now, there's an important point that was made in the course of this presentation today. That point is this, that our style of disaster risk response has always been intervention. What that means is that something happens and then we go to the place and begin to think how we can bring succor, and palliatives to those who are affected by it. But disaster risk management is broader than that. It involves also mitigation, and it involves sensitization so that people can prevent themselves from becoming victims, of disaster in any kind. If you take flood, for instance, it involves going into communities that are prone to flood incidents and then sensitizing the people during rainy season to move away from such areas so that when the flood comes, it doesn't affect them adversely.
Ṣàǹfààní gidigidi lára tèmi nílé mi o àtàwọn ọmọ mi o torí ara oúnjẹ ara pákídé ẹ̀mí àṣegàrí à ń tẹ̀bà à ń ṣèbẹ̀ à ń jẹun ìjọba ṣeun lọ́wọ́ á ràn wọ́n lọ́wọ́ ètò tó dáa ni tó fáìn tó dáa ni torí ìjọ yẹn gan kí wọ́n pé owó yẹn ẹlòmíì kò sí nǹkan kan pé bóyá bákan jíjẹ ṣùgbọ́n gba adé báyìí wọ́n kọ́kọ́ yà ayọ̀ 2000 wọ́n ṣèbẹ̀ àwọn ọmọ inú wọn dùn ara ráìsì àdàchẹ́ńjì tó kù sórí ìka pákí pé ká lè máa rí mu jẹun díẹ̀díẹ̀ ìjọba ṣe.
You are watching Service to Humanity, updating you on the activities of the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development as it carries out its mandates. Some weeks ago, we took you to Ogun State to see success stories of one of the clusters of the NSIP, the National Homegrown School Feeding Program. In this episode, we shall continue with that, and this time around, we shall take you to our Saviour Anglican School in Ijebu-Ode. Keep watching.
Our Saviour Anglican School is located in Italo-Ajoda town of Ijebu-Ode in Ogun State. The number of pupils in primaries 1 to 3 is 79, and they are all fed under the National Homegrown School Feeding Program.
It is sweet. Let them continue again.
Mr. Osho Lawrence, head teacher of the school, shares with us the impact of the school feeding program on the pupils and the school.
As we all know, when we feed, it will bring us some things, and it has showcased in the puppies while they are around and the food is being served. It increases the enrollment of the pupils because the food, serve a lot for the pupils. If you look around, this very school is a public school, and most children that comes here, they are from less privileged, they are from broken homes, and all this balance that they are not having it. With the inclusion of this homegrown feeding something program, it assists them in boosting their even increasing their IQ, intelligence coefficient. So when this one is there, it will add more value to the development of the pupils in terms of academics, even in terms of social value.
Adelaja Oluwagbemini has been a health teacher at our Saviour Anglican School since 2017. She shares with us how she coordinates the vendors assigned to the school.
Whenever they come like that, they won't serve until the food has been inspected by me. I inspect the food, the quantity, is it enough? We'll test it with a tip of spoon. Is it salty? Is it of good quality? Does it follow the timetable schedule for the day? So these are the things that then we look at the dressing of the cook. Is it in accordance with the prescribed code of dressing? So, and even the children, we are the one that will tell them when to serve. We will have served, when to serve round. We make sure that their environment, we provided them with a desk and table where they will put their food. They keep their kitchen, table gadgets in the clinic. So I make sure that at least we make sure that there is water for them to get the environment clean.
Adelaja speaks on the impact of the school feeding program in the school.
Before this program, we used to have children crying. The parents will be chasing them to come to school, and they will be at the gate. They will be crying. They will hold on to their parents. They will not want to come into the gate. If you get closer to them, ask them what is the matter. They will tell you, I have not been given food. Go inside. I will bring the food by break. By 11, I will bring the food. But now that they know that there's food on ground, they don't even cry out after their parents. At the gate, they will say goodbye, and they come into the school because they know that food is on ground for them.
Our Saviour Anglican School has two vendors, Adeola Wilobi and Balogun Olubumi. They share with us the impact of the school feeding program.
I've benefited a lot from it because they pay us regularly. Then I will do come to school, and the most thing that make me happy most is that some of these people, they don't normally come to school, but because of this food, they always come to school now.
I am grateful to God because the government has introduced a program that will help the vulnerable in the society, and it has helped me a lot.
The National Homegrown School Feeding Program under the National Social Investment Program currently has over 9 million pupils across the 36 states of the Federation that are being fed one nutritious meal per school day.
And that's our package on this episode of Service to Humanity. Join me again same time next week and same station for more on the strides of the ministry and her agencies in reaching the nation's most vulnerable with the initiatives of the federal government to better their lives. My name is Habiba Zoksok, saying good night and God bless Nigeria.